Her breath caught in the humid dusk as the man's hands grazed her waist, pulling her closer in the shadowed corner of the airstrip's private lounge. Valentina's silk blouse clung to her skin, the fabric whispering against her curves as his lips hovered near her throat. The air thrummed with unspoken promises, thick with the scent of jet fuel and her jasmine perfume. His fingers tightened, bold and unyielding, as if claiming something forbidden. She tilted her head, eyes half-lidded, letting the moment stretch, dangerous and electric. The world beyond them blurred. Only the pulse of their nearness mattered. He murmured something low, his voice a velvet blade, and she felt it slice through her composure. "You shouldn't be here," he said, though his hands betrayed his words, pulling her deeper into the dimness. Her lips parted, a smile flickering, sharp as a secret. "And yet," she replied, her tone molten, "here I am." The words hung like smoke, curling between them, as her fingers traced the edge of his jaw, slow and deliberate. Every touch was a dare. Every glance, a spark threatening to ignite. The lounge's glass walls reflected their silhouettes, distorted and fleeting, as if the world itself conspired to hide their recklessness. Outside, the jet waited, its sleek lines glinting under floodlights, a silent witness to their collision. His breath hitched as she leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear, promising chaos. "Careful," she whispered, her voice a velvet trap. "Some mistakes cost more than others." And then, sound, sharp, intrusive. Footsteps on the tarmac. The spell splintered. Valentina pulled back, her eyes flashing with something unreadable, anger, amusement, or both. She smoothed her blouse, every motion deliberate, as if reclaiming herself from the edge of ruin. He stood frozen, caught in her wake as she turned toward the jet, her heels clicking like a countdown. The night swallowed her silhouette, leaving only the echo of her warning. The reader, hooked by this charged encounter, would crave answers. Who was this woman? Who was the man daring to touch her? What stakes drove their reckless dance? It's only now, past the 400-word mark, does the narrative rewind to unravel the story from its roots, layering in the sensual, mysterious, and dramatic threads that define Valentina's world. Hours earlier, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the private airstrip in hues of amber and indigo. Valentina de la Cruz stepped from her chauffeured car, her tailored emerald suit catching the last rays like a flame. At 38, she carried herself with the poise of someone who owned not just the ground beneath her but the sky above it. Her dark hair, swept into a low chignon, gleamed under the airstrip's lights, and her eyes, sharp, hazel, unyielding, scanned the scene with quiet authority. She was no stranger to power, nor to the envy it bred. As the sole owner of De La Cruz Aviation, she commanded a fleet of private jets, a network of airstrips, and a reputation that whispered of ruthlessness cloaked in elegance. Her heels clicked against the tarmac as she approached her personal jet, a Gulfstream G700, its polished fuselage reflecting the world like a mirror. This trip to Dubai was critical, a deal to expand her company's reach into the Middle East, worth hundreds of millions. She thrived on such stakes, the thrill of conquest pulsing through her veins. Yet tonight, something felt off, a faint discord in the air, like a note played wrong in a symphony. At the jet's stairs stood a man she didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He wore the pilot's uniform with an arrogance that seemed to challenge the very sky. His name tag read Elliot Kane, a name unfamiliar to her. Valentina's brow arched slightly. She employed only the best, and her pilots were vetted with surgical precision. A new hire, possible, but unlikely without her knowledge. He stepped forward, blocking her path, his eyes raking over her with a boldness that bordered on insolence. "This jet is reserved," he said, his voice carrying the weight of assumed authority. "You can't board." Valentina paused, her lips curving into a smile that was equal parts amusement and warning. Confusion flickered within her, but she buried it beneath her composure. "I think there's been a mistake," she said, her tone smooth as polished marble, though her eyes held a glint of steel. Elliot scoffed, crossing his arms, his stance widening as if to anchor his claim. "No mistake, lady. This is a private flight. Move along." His words dripped with condescension, assuming her to be an interloper. Perhaps a glamorous opportunist trying to charm her way onto a billionaire's jet. The assumption stung, not because it was true, but because it revealed his ignorance and his prejudice. Nearby, a crew member, a young woman named Leela, her uniform crisp but her expression uneasy, watched the exchange. Her fingers twitched around the clipboard she held, as if debating whether to intervene. Leila knew who Valentina was. Everyone at De La Cruz Aviation did. The pilot's arrogance was a misstep, a crack in the foundation of protocol. She shifted her weight, her loyalty torn between deference to her new superior and the truth she owed her employer. Valentina's gaze flicked to Lila, registering her discomfort, then returned to Elliot. She could have corrected him then, could have dismantled his assumptions with a single sentence. But something in his defiance intrigued her, a spark of rebellion that both repelled and fascinated her. She tilted her head, letting the moment stretch, her silence more potent than words. "Perhaps you should check your manifest," she suggested, her voice low, almost intimate, as if sharing a secret. The words were a test, an invitation to back down gracefully. But Elliot, emboldened by his misjudgment, doubled down. "I don't need to check anything," he snapped, his tone sharpening. "I know who's cleared to board, and it's not you." His eyes lingered on her, not with respect, but with a dismissive appraisal, as if her beauty were her only currency, and one he deemed insufficient. The air grew heavier, charged with the tension of a storm gathering strength. Valentina's smile didn't waver, but her eyes darkened, a shadow passing over them like clouds obscuring the sun. She reached into her purse, her movements deliberate, and retrieved her phone. With a single tap she dialed a number, her gaze never leaving Elliot's. "Yes, Marcus," she said, when the call connected, her voice carrying the calm of a predator circling its prey. "I'm at the airstrip. There's an issue with the pilot. I need you here. Now." She ended the call, slipping the phone back into her purse with a grace that belied the fire within her. Elliot's smirk faltered, a crack in his bravado, but he held his ground, unwilling to concede. Lila, meanwhile, took a step back, her clipboard now a shield against the unfolding drama. Minutes later, the screech of tires announced the arrival of Marcus Reyes, the airstrip manager. A wiry man in his 50s, his face was pale as he hurried toward them, his sit jacket flapping in his haste. He reached Valentina first, his voice low and urgent. "Miss De La Cruz, I'm so sorry. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Elliot's eyes widened, the name hitting him like a physical blow. De La Cruz. Not just a passenger. Not just a name on a manifest, the owner of everything around him. The jet, the airstrip, the company that signed his paycheck. His arrogance drained away, leaving only the cold sweat of realization. Marcus turned to Elliot, his whisper harsh and cutting. "You didn't check the manifest, did you? You assumed she was what? Some nobody?" The words were a lash, stripping away Elliot's pretense. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. Valentina raised a hand, silencing Marcus. She stepped closer to Elliot, her presence commanding, her scent enveloping him, a blend of jasmine and power. "You made a choice," she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "You looked at me and saw what you wanted to see. That was your mistake." Elliot stammered, his apology tripping over itself. "Miss De La Cruz, I didn't know. I'm sorry." "Your apology is irrelevant," she cut in, her tone final. "You're done here." She turned to Marcus. "Ensure he's escorted off the premises. He's no longer employed." Marcus nodded, gesturing to security, who had materialized as if summoned by her will. Elliot stood frozen, the weight of his error crushing him, his ambition, his pride, all reduced to ash in a matter of moments. Valentina ascended the jet's stairs, her movements fluid, regal. She didn't look back, didn't need to. The quiet smile that curved her lips was enough. A private victory, a reclamation of her domain. The door closed behind her, sealing her from the chaos below. Justice, as the airstrip's lore would later whisper, had flown in fast that day. But the story didn't end there. The jet's engines roared to life, carrying Valentina toward Dubai, yet the echoes of that confrontation lingered, both on the tarmac and within her. The man in the lounge, the one whose touch had nearly unraveled her, was no stranger to this drama. He was Rafael Vega, her former lover, her betrayer, and now, impossibly, her new co-pilot, hired under an alias to infiltrate her world once more. Rafael had watched the scene unfold from the lounge, his presence unnoticed by Valentina until their paths collided in that shadowed corner. His return wasn't chance, it was a calculated move, driven by a hunger for redemption, revenge, or perhaps both. Years ago, he'd been her equal, her confidant, the one who'd shared her bed and her dreams. But ambition had fractured them. He'd betrayed her, leaking company secrets to a rival in a bid for power, costing her millions and nearly her empire. She'd exiled him, vowing never to look back. Yet here he was, slipping past her defenses, his touch reigniting a fire she'd thought long extinguished. Their encounter in the lounge had been no accident. Rafael had orchestrated it, knowing she'd be there, knowing the sight of her would stir the embers of their past. He'd counted on her curiosity, her inability to resist a mystery, and she'd played along, drawn to the danger, her pulse racing at the thought of unraveling him again. But the footsteps that interrupted them, Lila, checking the lounge before takeoff, had snapped her back to reality, reminding her of the stakes. Now, as the jet climbed into the night, Valentina sat in her private cabin, the leather seat cool against her skin. She sipped a glass of Bordeaux, the wine's warmth a contrast to the chill of her thoughts. Rafael was on this flight, seated in the cockpit beside her new pilot, a man she'd yet to meet. The irony wasn't lost on her. Two men, both presumptuous in their own way, both underestimating her. Elliot's mistake had been arrogance. Rafael's was believing he could outmaneuver her heart. She closed her eyes, letting the hum of the engines ground her. The memory of Rafael's touch lingered, a phantom sensation that both thrilled and infuriated her. Passion and betrayal, they were two sides the same coin, and she'd flipped it too many times to trust its outcome. Yet she couldn't deny the pull, the way his presence stirred something primal within her. It wasn't love, not anymore. It was power, the need to conquer him, to prove she was untouchable. In the cockpit, Rafael adjusted his headset, his movements precise but his mind elsewhere. He'd seen her dismiss Elliot with surgical precision, a reminder of her ruthlessness. It both awed and unnerved him. He'd returned to reclaim something, her trust, her empire, or perhaps just a piece of the woman he'd lost. But every glance from her was a blade, cutting through his resolve. She knew who he was now. Lila's whispered warning in the lounge had ensured that the game was up. Yet he couldn't walk away, not. The new pilot, a seasoned professional named Carter, glanced at Rafael, sensing the tension but unaware of its roots. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice steady. Rafael's jaw tightened. "Fine," he said, though nothing was. He could feel Valentina's presence through the cabin door, gravitational force pulling him toward ruin. He'd planned to confront her in Dubai, to reveal his intentions, part apology, part challenge. But plans, he knew, crumbled in her orbit. Back in her cabin, Valentina opened her tablet, pulling up the Dubai deal's contracts. Work was her anchor, her shield against the chaos Rafael brought. Yet her thoughts drifted to the airstrip, to Elliot's fall, to Rafael's audacity. Both men had underestimated her, assuming they could define her worth. Elliot had paid the price. Rafael's reckoning was coming. The jet leveled off, cruising at 40,000 feet, the world below a tapestry of stars and shadow. The Valentina leaned back, her mind mapping the days ahead. Dubai would be a battleground, not just for the deal but for her soul. Rafael's return was a test, one she intended to pass. She'd built her empire on her terms, and no man, not Elliot, not Rafael, would unravel it. The narrative spirals deeper, weaving through the days in Dubai, where Valentina navigates high-stakes negotiations and Rafael's relentless pursuit. Their interactions crackle with tension, each encounter a dance of desire and distrust. She confronts him in a penthouse suite, their words sharp as knives, their touches a dangerous echo of the past. "You think you can walk back into my life?" she accuses, her voice trembling with restrained fury. "You broke us, Rafael. You don't get to rewrite the ending." He counters, his eyes burning with conviction. "I came back to fix it," he says, "to prove I'm not the man I was." But his sincerity is laced with ambition, a hunger she recognizes too well. The deal closes successfully, cementing her legacy, but Raphael's presence threatens to destabilize her. She discovers he's been in contact with her rivals, his motives unclear, redemption or sabotage. The betrayal cuts deeper than before, yet she can't fully sever him from her heart. Passion blinds her, but only for a moment. In the climax, she outmaneuvers him, exposing his duplicity to her board. He's stripped of his alias, his plans dismantled. Yet, in a final confrontation, she chooses mercy over vengeance, letting him walk away, not for him, but for herself. "You're free," she tells him, her voice steady, "but you'll never own me again." The story closes with Valentina boarding her jet home, alone but unbroken. The airstrip fades below, a symbol of battles won. Her smile, quiet and powerful, mirrors that first ascent. Justice, once again, flies fast. But this time, it's her own.